So I'm excited to start the fourth canto. Um, you might hear some typing and stuff now because I might be editing stuff. If I find mistakes or something, that has to change a little bit. All right. Well, what happens after that big long story about Kapila and Devahuti? What would come next? Well, to figure that out, just backtrack to where the story came from. Do you remember the names Maitreya and Vidura? Probably not, because it's been over a month since you heard them. But Maitreya was the one telling the story to Vidura about Devahuti and Kapila. And do you remember how that story came up? It came up when discussing Brahma and how he went about creating things. After we had Brahma's awakening, with the story of Brahma's awakening, and then his darshan with Vishnu, and then he starts to actually do his stuff. He starts to create the universe and generate life forms. And we had the boar incarnation came out early in that, when he had finally been able to generate organic reproductive life forms, aka humans, the most sophisticated organic reproductive life forms. And he told him to go live on Earth, and then Earth wasn't there. So then the boar incarnation came out. Then we hear about their kids. After that, we heard about their children. And one of the children was Devahuti, and she married Kardama. Then we hear about her children first, the last of which is Kapila. Then we hear that big long story about her and Kapila. Now, when we're done with that story, Maitreya is going to go back to the children of Shatarupa and Manu, the original humans. Make sense? Could you follow that kind of crazy plot graph? So we're back to Shatarupa. Shatarupa is the queen of humanity. She's the original mother of humanity. She is able to, she's not exactly a human, but she's the mother of humanity. She's able to take different forms to produce different children. That's hence her name is Shatarupa. And then there's Swayambhuva Manu, who's the father of humanity. So Maitreya says Shatarupa gave Manu 3 famous daughters. Maybe there was more that weren't famous, or maybe all of the daughters were famous. Akuti, Devahuti, and Prasuti. Now, in this section, the chapter 1 of part 4 is a lot of genealogies, a lot of which people had which children. And it's totally boring. Like, until you know the language, until you think about what the names mean. Then it's super interesting. All of a sudden it becomes super interesting. So for each name, I'll tell you what the name means. And then all this stuff will become very, very interesting. How this plus this gives rise to this. So the Shatarupa, which means a million forms, and Manu, which means ambition, they have 3 children, 3 daughters. Akuti, which means inspiration, the one who inspires, kind of like Rohini, the inspirer. Akuti, she brings out Kuta. She brings out your ambition. Devahuti, Huta, Deva, the one who invokes divinity. Because she's the mother of Devahuti, because she's the mother of Kapila, Vishnu. So she's called Devahuti. She brought Deva into the world. She brought divinity into the world. Prasuti means the bearer of children, the procreator. These are the 3 results if you take manifold possibilities and mix it with ambition. You'll get inspiration, and you'll get creativity, offspring, and you'll get a chance to show divinity. These 3 children, wow, look at that, my eyes are working all of a sudden. These 3 children married Brahma's, these These 3 daughters married Brahma's children. Let me write that. These 3 daughters married Brahma's children, and their offspring are the root of the world's population. Like they look for the Adam and Eve, archaeological Adam and Eve and stuff. With the Bhagavatam cosmology, the root of the genealogy of all the species, more than humans, are these 3 daughters, Akuti, Devahuti, and Prasuti. So now, with his wife's approval, Manu allowed his daughter Akuti to marry the sage Ruchi. Now this is really interesting stuff. So some of it is very interesting about how the marriages are done. You don't find the father as the boss of the marriage. You find the women are the boss of the marriage. The daughter wants to marry somebody. The mother also agrees, and then the father allows it. So with his wife's approval, Manu allows his daughter Akuti to marry the sage Ruchi, but he has a condition. Actually, both of the parents have a condition. Manu and Shatarupa have a condition. You can marry Ruchi if your boy, we will raise your boy. Grandma and grandpa will raise the child. And I wonder why. So who does Akuti marry? Akuti means inspiration. Rohini. It's Akuti. Inspiration. She marries Ruchi. Ruchi basically means desire. So if inspiration marries desire, then you're going to get products. You're going to get offspring. Ruchi, the desire, a blessed progenitor with great spiritual realization and exalted meditations, produced twins with Akuti. They named the boy Yagya and the girl Dakshina, because inspirations, Akuti, and desires, Ruchi, are fulfilled when they lead to efforts, Yagya, that successfully invoke rewards, Dakshina. See how interesting it is when you think about what the names mean? You just hear Akuti married Ruchi, and then they had Yagya and Dakshina. It means absolutely nothing. But if you hear that inspiration marries desire, it will produce 2 things: effort and results, rewards. When your inspiration marries your desire, then you should actually become active to get the results that you want. Now, remember, the grandparents said the boy will be like our child. We'll raise the boy. So there's an interesting reason why, kind of a social reason why. This boy, Yagya, is Vishnu. And the girl, Dakshina, is Vishnu's consort, who's named here as Bhu. Bhu is another name for Shri, but it specifically refers to... You see, Bhu is the earth, the place where things exist. The earth is a fractal or a reflection of Shri, Lakshmi. And so Bhu is Vishnu, Bhu is Lakshmi, Bhu is Vishnu's consort. In old Indian sculpture, you'll see Bhu with Vishnu. Anyway, this is important for environmentalism. For, the importance of environmental responsibility. This is what happens when your worldview becomes Bhagavan-centric instead of self-centric. Then you feel really embarrassed to make the earth suffer for your sense gratification, since the earth is Vishnu's wife. So these two twins that are born to Akuti and Ruchi are Vishnu and Lakshmi, Vishnu and Bu. So these two twins are married, eternally married, they're consort. But they're appearing from the same womb as twins. So the grandparents, foreseeing this, want to separate them so socially they're not brother and sister. So the boy was Vishnu himself, and the girl was an expansion of goddess Bu, Vishnu's consort. Manu was delighted to raise the extremely brilliant boy in his own home. Ruchi was delighted to raise the girl. After being raised separately, their eternal, unstoppable love brought them together in marriage. Yagya and Dakshina were delighted to produce the 12 children famous as the children of delight. So Yagya and Dakshina, or Vishnu and Lakshmi, they take birth as twins from Akuti and Ruchi. But from the moment of birth, they get raised separately, so they don't have the social stigma of being brother and sister. Then when they grow up, they get married, they make 12 children. And these are called children of delight. So you have inspiration meeting desire. They produce efforts and results. And the results are the results of delight. When the children of delight, when you're inspired and you're engaged by your own desire, then the things that you produce are products of your delight. They're not products of your hard work or something. Even though there's hard work involved in doing inspirational work, Yagya is involved in doing inspirational work. The actual result is children of delight. They named the children to express 12 successive results of fulfilling inspirations and desires through rewarded efforts. So there's the mother and father, inspiration and desire. And they have efforts and rewards, Yagya and Dakshin. Yagya and Dakshin have 12 children, and then they name the 12 children according to the results of fulfilling inspirations and desires through rewarded efforts. They named the first children Tosha. The first child is named Tosha because the result of fulfilling a desire is satisfaction, Tosha. That's the primary result of fulfilling a desire. Desire is Akuti. Fulfillment's Dakshina. Desire is Ruchi. The desire pairs with inspiration, Akuti. And the result is Dakshina. But what's the first aspect of Dakshina? What will Dakshina produce? Tosh, satisfaction. So the first thing that results from fulfilling your desire, working to fulfill your desire, is satisfaction, Tosham. The second child they named Pratosh, because deeper satisfaction generates delight, Pratosh. The third child they named Santosh. So basically, fulfilling desires gives Tosha to different degrees, which means satisfaction. Satisfaction, delight, and the third one is contentment, Santosh. They named the fourth child Bhadra because contentment, the feeling of having no unfulfilled wants or needs, is the gateway to auspiciousness and generosity, Bhadra. So this is very interesting, right? If your desires are fulfilled through proper efforts, Yagya, then you'll first experience Tosha, which means immediate satisfaction. Then Pratosh, which means continuing, ongoing, or deeper satisfaction. And then Santosh, which means contentment. Contentment means, well, that was great. The feeling of, well, that was great means I've had enough in a positive way. Once you have enough, then you have surplus, you can become Bhadra, the fourth child, generous, giving. They named the fifth child Shanti because generosity quiets selfishness and makes one peaceful and calm. Or the next result after Bhadra is Shanti. Fulfilling of the desires properly. Greedy Rick, this is your question. Can you fulfill your desires in a way that's not going to drag you down to hell? So if you fulfill your desires by yagya or proper action, then this is the result. The results will be tosh, pratosh, santosh, bhadra, and shanti. First you feel satisfied, then you feel content and deeply content. Then that makes you magnanimous. That makes you treat others well, and that also makes you calm, shanti, peaceful. When you are So again, I think I've said this before, but if this is the solution to crime. Crime is ashanti. Criminals are ashanti. They're not peaceful. Or war is ashanti. The solution to crime and war isn't treaties and agreements necessarily. The solution to crime and war is that people are happy. When people are happy, they don't fight. People fight when they need to. So if people have tosh, pratosh, santosh, then they become bhadra, not abhadra. And then bhadra produces peace, shanti, not war, ashanti. It is actually, Bardo, the same bhadra as the nakshatra. They named the fifth child Shanti because generosity quiets selfishness and makes one peaceful and calm. They named the sixth child Idaspati because peaceful calm brings refreshment. Idaspati. So this is the different. If you pursue desires without proper yagya, without proper effort, then you actually become exhausted. But when you pursue desires through proper effort, this is where the nakshatra Pushya is very important. The Pushya nakshatra signifies the wisdom that allows you to differentiate between a proper effort and an improper effort. So the extended result is idaspati, or refreshment. You get refreshed and energized to do more rather than get depleted. Like if you pig out on pizza or potato chips, you don't get idaspati. You get the opposite of that. You get the feeling like, man, I better not eat for another 8 hours because I feel kind of sick. But when you eat properly and you eat food that's delicious but healthy, then very soon after eating you feel idaspati. I could eat again. The seventh child they named Idma because refreshment renews inspiration, and that's what Idma means, and elevates it through the wisdom of experience. The eighth child they named Kavi because wise inspiration leads to expertise. So this is really interesting. If you pursue your desires with proper effort, you'll wind up becoming expert in satisfying desires, and that's what Kavi means. And you can't really be an expert or a Kavi if you're not peaceful and content yourself. This is another thing for all you people out there that are really into sex and love and relationships and stuff. You can't be an expert when you're needy. You only can be an expert when you have everything to give and nothing that you need. So expertise in Akuti and Ruchi, in fulfilling of desires and inspiring of desires, comes after there's contentment, peace, and generosity. So don't expect thirsty people to be experts. They'll only be experts in filling their own belly and pigging out and then being exhausted. They named the ninth child Vibhu because expertise leads to greatness, Vibhu. The 10th child they named Svahna because greatness and expertise in fulfilling desires auspiciously and without self-centeredness leads to self-mastery, Svahna. Then this is also really interesting, Rick, because after Kavi, expertise in the matter of fulfilling desires, what's the second thing? It leads to Vibhu, which is greatness, which means you start to become bigger than the desires. Vibhu is like bigness, greatness. you start to become bigger and stronger than the desires. So you're not pushed by the desires anymore, you're pushing them. And then that vibhu-ness leads to swahna, where you have self-mastery. So this is what's the goal of yoga? It's swahna, or self-mastery. This is a different path being explained here. It's not the yoga path. This is like a tantra path or a karma path. Veda has so many different paths for so many different people to achieve the same goal. This path is by participating in the fulfillment of desires under really expert guidance. Pushya, the Brihaspati, you need the Brihaspati, but under really expert guidance, then you can achieve satisfaction, blah, 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 all the way up to peace, all the way up to kavi, or expertise, and vibhu, where you become greater than the desires, then svana, where you also achieve self-mastery. They name the 11th child Sudev. Creativity. Creativity is in the parents. It's Akuti and Ruchi. Akuti is creativity, inspiration. And Ruchi, that's the root of all this stuff. Then so after Swahna, we get Sudev, because self-mastery allows us to experience that we are rays from the brilliant sun of the super self, Sudev. So, or another way of saying Sudev is good divinity, Sudev. So you become divine. You're not becoming divine, you're experiencing your divinity. When you have self-mastery, then you'll see the self for what it is, which is Deva, which is divine. So this is interesting now. The Bhagavatam is describing the tantric path. The tantric path is the idea that you can actually master sense gratification by enjoying it, but you have to do it very carefully and correctly with yagya and dakshina. If you do it with yagya and dakshina, if you do akuti and ruchi, which is the fulfillment of your desires, with yagya and dakshina. Now, yagya is specifically synonymous to Vedic sacrifice and ceremony, because those are the expert ways of fulfilling desires. So that might be lost on a Western audience, but it's not really all that important in this day and age. But just to show you what I mean by expertly trying to fulfill it, it doesn't just mean going out to the bar and trying a different kind of whiskey until you find the right kind of whiskey. It's really wise and expertly guided approach to sense activity, sense gratification. And you'll get all these results, which wind up being the same as the results of yoga. Yes. Now, well, we haven't got to the 12th child yet. The 12th and final son. Son? Spelled wrong. They named the 12th and final son Rochana. They named the 12th final son Rochana, because when one's inspirations and desires strive to reward the brilliant super self, one becomes enlightened by the most luminous delight, Rochana. It's really, really wonderful. So when there's so many names and words now. We got like 16 concepts. Let's put them all in place. Akuti is inspiration, creativity, so forth, arousal. And ruchi is desire. When the ruchi is stimulated and aroused and feels creative, then if it endeavors with yagya and dakshina, with maybe dakshina instead of rewards, we should put expertise, because the word also implies that. I'll think about this and look this up in dictionaries more. But in other words, the idea is if you pursue the desires really carefully, correctly and under good guidance, you'll get a series of 12 results depending on how expert you do it. The first is simply tosha, or satisfaction, and there's a deeper satisfaction, like a future long-term satisfaction, pratosh. Let's put it that way, long-term satisfaction. Then santosh means complete satisfaction. Complete satisfaction means your desires have stopped. And then the fourth is bhadra, because that's the condition. When the desires, self-desires stop, that's bhadra, that's auspiciousness. Then that generates peacefulness, shanti. When there's peace, then you can have refreshment. You feel invigorated. Not by a burning passion sensation, but now by refreshing, idaspati. You feel refreshed and able to act out of not hunger and thirst, but out of joy. Then there's idma, which is the elevation of the self. Idma brings us to the stage of kavi, which means expertise. You become really expert in dealing with the world. That expertise generates bigness, or vibhu, which means we become bigger than the forces that we're dealing with. When you become bigger than the forces that you're dealing with, then you start to realize yourself instead of the stuff that you're dealing with. So that leads to svahna, or self-mastery. When there's self-mastery, then sudev. You start to come in contact with divinity. And when there's sudev, when you're in contact with divinity, then there's rochana, which means true pleasure. Very cool, right? This is just a genealogical table. You could just miss all this stuff if somebody just throws 16 names at you and says, here's the 12 children of these two people who are the children of these two people. Yeah. Right, Abhishek? Abhishek. Dvivedi, he knows his family used to master 2 Vedas. Maybe they still do. Probably Rig and Yajur. Let's just finish up this section. During Swayambhuva Manu's reign, these 12 children of delight filled the posts of the 12 gods. Marichi and others filled the post of the 7 sages, and Yagya took the post of the god's lord, Indra. See, the gods have not yet manifest, but you kind of need some administrative stuff. You need administrators. So prior to the gods being manifest, these beings filled those roles. The 12 children were the 12 gods. I can't tell you who the 12 gods are by name, but I think they're like Yama and those types of very important posts, Agni. Marichi are the 7 sages. So apparently after Marichi, these are the original Prajapatis taking the Saptarishi. But apparently afterwards some other people take over that post. And then who is Indra is Yagya, who's Vishnu. There's some really interesting stuff there. Manu, so that's a description of Akuti, Manu's daughter, who married Ruchi the sage. Then Devahuti is another daughter, and Prasuti is another daughter. And then they had 2 boys as well, Priyavrata and Uttanapad. Manu's 2 powerful sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapad, also had children and grandchildren who were important during their eras, but we'll discuss them later on. Blessed Manu wedded his daughter Prasuti to Brahma's son Daksha. That's the next story that's coming up. The story that's coming up is Daksha's children from Prasuti. So Blessed Manu wedded his daughter Prasuti to Brahma's son Daksha, and the 2 of them greatly accelerated the mission of populating the world. We will discuss that in a moment. Devahuti, we've already heard almost all there is to hear about Devahuti and her husband Kardama. But now we will hear about the children Devahuti's 9 daughters gave to the 9 spiritual sages. you wanted to know, maybe you wanted to know what happened to the 9 sisters of Kapila. So now you'll hear about what they did. That's a whole nother thing. It's just like what we did today with the desires and all those things. Each one of these daughters has a shorter but similar thing. So we'll cover that tomorrow. Because now I need time to go and edit this. All right. So that was super cool, right? I love this. We'll get a lot more of this kind of thing. And then what we're going to get is the children from Prasuti and Daksha become very important because one of them marries Shiva. And then the story of her marriage to Shiva is going to take up about 10 or 12 chapters. And it's super, super interesting. Very, very important to Indian cultural history. Very, very important to understanding a lot of key concepts in the Vedas. And just a really, really operatic, intense love story. Just super intense story. Super intense. So it's coming up soon. Let me see what else you got here in the questions before I go. I've got things on my mind that I want to change in the text a little bit. Bardo, to follow up Melissa had a question. Is this Tantra Yoga the path of self-fulfillment described in the Nyaya school? Oh, sorry. I remember I had an outstanding question from yesterday, too. Who was that from? Is the Tantra Yoga the path of self? I don't know if the Nyaya school describes that. I don't know that answer. To follow up Melissa's question, does Tantra mean you surrendered your auspicious desires? Tantra means mechanical way. Mantra means mental way. Tantra means mechanical way. Tat, it comes from the word tat. And mantra comes from the word manas. Tat means a physical thing. So Tantra means through the means of something physical, and mantra means through the means of something mental. So we can accomplish things through Tantra. That means we're going to accomplish them through physical means. And we can accomplish things through mantra. That means we're going to accomplish them through mental, emotional, etc. means. Conceptual means. So one of the yogic paths, some aspects of any path is Tantra, for example. Even in Bhakti Yoga, there's Tantra, which means the physical way that you do things. How do you set up an altar? That's Tantra. What ingredients do you put in the offering? That's Tantra. So every path has a tantric component to it. But Tantra as a separate yoga means physical yoga. So we're going to be engaging in physical activity. The concept is we're engaging in this world. Whereas the concepts in the other yogas is we're kind of disengaging from this world. But they both achieve disengagement from the world. As shown. Tiffany, this may be a very pedestrian question, but if I'm understanding things up till now, how has anything felt as pleasurable apart from being directly related to Bhagavan? So why would you pursue it? Pleasure is simple. I think you got too philosophical about what pleasure is. Pleasure is a sensation that you feel when you fulfill a desire. That's as simple as it gets. That's why if you invent a desire and fulfill it, you'll feel happy. That's how games work. Games say, you see this little plastic thing, that's you. Get your little piece to the 10th square and you win. And you get your piece a little bit closer to the 10th square and you feel happy. And then something happens and it pushes your piece back from the 10th square and you feel unhappy. So pleasure actually just depends on your desire. This is why if you want to please somebody, you have to excite their desire. This is what the whole courtship and everything is all about. So there's all kinds of pleasure. I can just decide that I want to get my plastic piece to the 10th square of a game board, and if I get it there, I'll experience happiness. The question is how real, deep, significant is that happiness? It depends on how real, deep, and significant the desire is. That's why when you achieve something in a game, it's kind of fun, but doesn't really long-term affect your life. But when you achieve something that's kind of more real and enduring, then it's more enduring and real happiness. So the ultimate type of happiness is a happiness which is based on a desire that has ultimate realness to it, which would be the ultimate happiness is only achievable in relation to the ultimate reality, Bhagavan. But conditional happiness is possible in relation to any type of condition. So by fulfilling a desire, you get something called tosha, which means the sense of fulfillment of the desire, which is the basis of pleasure. Thank you, Diksha. Diksha is a great name too. It's such a deep word. Heidi, I can't help wondering that if one reaches self-mastery, is there ever a concern of losing that self-mastery to human fallibility? We're not perfect. Yeah, it depends on how you reach it and how full you reach it. But if you really truly reach self-mastery, then it doesn't decay, because it's a type of a perfection, and perfection means there's not an imperfection in it. So every yogic path in their manuals, they're always going to identify the point of no return. That prior to achieving this state, you can slide back in your progress. But after achieving this state, there's no more fallibility in you. So there's no potential to fall backwards. Every different yogic path will have that at a different point in a different stage. And typically it's very, 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 very high. But remember what we said yesterday, even when you fall back from a yoga, you still have made that progress. You just get derailed, sidetracked from pursuing it. Later you come back to that point. Let me see. Operatic, right? I used the word, right, Johnny? Operatic, because I was thinking soap opera. It's very, very operatic, or soap opera. It's really dramatic. Right. Bishajji, we are going to hear about Satiji. So with this path, greediness, in a way, is it similar to Kameshwar, mastering the desire and becoming larger than it? Yes. But you're be careful with the term master, because it's very, very closely tied to the whole problem. Thanks, SC. What do you call the yoga way that combines action and mind reflection of its own nature? You have karma yoga. There's three basic types of yoga categories: karma, jnana, and bhakti. Then the transitional stage between karma and jnana is what you're talking about. Karma yoga means your focus is on proper action. Like Tantra yoga is a type of karma yoga. Your focus is on acting the right way, which is what we heard all about in these children. That produces things like swahna and vibhu, that produces knowledge, that elevates you, idma. When you act properly, you get realization about what the world is and what proper action is, why it's proper, etc. Thank you, spiritual. So that leads to higher and higher kinds of karma yoga. It's just called, simple terms for it is Jnana Mishra Karma Bhakti, or you get Sakama versus Nishkama Karma Yoga. Nishkama is the later stage. So the thing that you're asking about, Bardo, is, I think it was Bardo, is Nishkama Karma Yoga. Right, Anil? Is she here, though? Who asked about Kapila's disciple? Anyway, she'll probably watch the replay. Can Tantra be like a technique? Yes, it's a technique. And Yantra, Yat and Tat is just the reflexive pronouns. Yantra is the machine for doing the technique. An instrument, exactly as you said. Bardo, what's Turiya? Is it a Sanskrit state? Yeah. Remember when we talked about when Devahuti asked Kapila if you could experience the self directly right now? And excuse me, I just poked myself in the eye. And he said, yeah, whenever you go into deep sleep, you can get close to tasting the soul. That if you go further than deep sleep and you actually contact the self itself, it's called Turiya. If you're doubting yourself about being able to achieve your desires, are you going about it the right way? The wrong way, probably, but you need expert guidance. All right. Let me answer the question. I think it was Karen Abrams from yesterday. Asked about Asuri. Let me check my email too, because I asked a really great scholar about the question. See if I got an answer yet. Here it is. All right, so the thing is, in the Bhagavatam, Kapila instructs Devahuti, and then Devahuti instructs the world. Sankhya Yoga. In the Sankhya school and the Sankhya discipline, they have a different view. They don't talk about Devahuti. They have an idea that somebody named Asuri it's not connected to Kapila directly. It's very confusing. This scholar that I asked him clarified it for me. The concept that Karen had was they think that Kapila instructed Asuri and Asuri instructed Panchasika, who established the school. However, Panchasika's mother was named Kapila. It's not the same Kapila. Asuri is an unmarried person. So this is not related to Kapila, really. So this is some later development of the school. Some later iteration of the school was established by Asuri. And the relation to Kapila is there because Kapila is the originator of the system. So the people who are following Asuri's school want to give him some relationship to Kapila. The relation is that Asuri's student is Panchashika, whose mother is Kapila. So that's the answer there. Okay. All right, guys. So I'll see you tomorrow. No, I won't see you tomorrow. It's the weekend. So I'll see you guys on Monday. We'll continue hearing about these really interesting genealogies and what they actually mean. Thanks, everybody.